Welcome, my name is Transleona. I'm a raccoon girl on Twitch. The following is a recording of one of my latest streams on Twitch. Sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy the show. Ahaha, did you call? The flames danced bewitchingly, then went out as one, as if something tremendously heavy had collapsed down onto it. The carpeted floor shook with a thud. Who is it? Duke Gaston took a step back. The shadow illuminated by the moon was tremendous and inhuman. My lord, fear not. This is our assassin, Harlequin. He will remove all that is in your way with his puppet. The assassin sketched a mocking bow. Aha ha. I do love hunting. I don't take jobs unless the prey is lively. A sickening laugh shook the darkness, bringing a nasty smile to the Duke's face as well. Worry not, I'm sure your hunt will be most enjoyable. And so did the night, bathed in red by a crimson moon, fade to dawn, melting like ice. More chapters! Afternoon in the palace began with a tea party in the gardens. The princess, as always, filled 3 cups of black tea from the pot. Please enjoy your tea, my thanks, the Blue Knight intoned. Thank you very much, Pedro said. Pedro moved the Blue Knight with his left hand as he sipped the tea made by the princess. It was the happiest moment in their otherwise busy days. Good servant, you really seem to enjoy your tea. It makes it very worth the effort for the one who made it. Haha, you are too kind. Smiling bitterly, Pedro pulled his strings. The Blue Knight in one go emptied the tea in the cup into the leather sack in his neck. At this, Princess Tia could only sigh, whereas Sir Pedro here seems to hardly find it delicious at all, and makes it difficult to be motivated. Pardon me, I fear I'm an impolite man. In his heart, Pedro felt a nervous edge, but the Blue Knight answered with an ever-calm face. There had been countless moments where it seemed as if everything would be revealed, but Princess Tia showed no signs of doubting the truth of the Blue Knight. The princess smiled faintly, but her expression quickly turned somber. I suppose it doesn't matter. These fun afternoons will end tomorrow. After the crowning ceremony the following day, you shall both leave the city, after all. At the princess's lonely words, Pedro's heart beat fast as a drum. I fear I am a man on the path of the warrior. So, my apologies, the Blue Knight said. No, I should apologize. I shall hardly make much of a queen like this. The princess shook herself and smiled brightly. Forgetting to control the puppet, Pedro ducked his head to hide the longing on his face. He would have loved to stay as her guard. Though she may have been of noble birth, Princess Tia was a lonely girl who had lost her father. However, she had been speaking not of a servant like Pedro, but of the Blue Knight. To the princess, Pedro was simply part of the package. Thinking that made his chest hurt somehow. It was a pain such as he'd never felt when he was handling his puppets. Ultimately, Pedro had chosen, even if it meant saddening the princess, to flee from this unbearable pain in his chest. Would you like a second cup? As if to clear the heavy atmosphere, the princess offered the pot with a smile. Ooh, that does sound good. Mind giving me a cup? With an unnerving laugh, a shadow leapt in. Ah, what? A sudden gust tore through the garden, sending the tea set flying off the table. Crimson wings beat the air as an immense puppet in the form of a devil fell to the earth. Sorry for interrupting your lovely tea party, tittered a voice. Would you mind playing with me for a bit? On the devil's left arm was a human figure. It was the masked puppeteer, Harlequin. I'll make sure it's plenty of fun, he giggled. Lady Tia, stand back! Pedro, shielding the princess behind him, sent the Blue Knight forward towards the Crimson Devil's right arm. With a blind spot for the masked puppeteer. With a rapid turn, the knight let loose a heavy strike. The tip of the sword was swallowed up in the base of the creature's wing. The demon's right arm flashed up. Blade and claw scraped, sending sparks to the air. Losing its balance, the Blue Knight took an unsteady step back. The demon gave a shiver, and a barbed tail thick as a log screamed through the air, striking forward. Astonished by the technique, Pedro snapped the Blue Knight back, dodging the tail swipe. Oh, you are good. I didn't think you were in the same business. The masked puppeteer spoke not to the Blue Knight, but to Pedro. The Blue Knight, as if to interrupt these words, pointed its sword at the puppeteer. What nonsense are you speaking? If you shall not come, then I shall strike first. Then shall I strike first? Even now, Pedro tried to hide it. Princess Tia, with a confused expression, gazed upon the preceding events. I see, so that's how it is, the masked puppeteer, as if suddenly realizing the situation, laughed softly. My, well, let no one call me rude. If you'd rather not share, I'll stay quiet, but you know. The puppeteer's voice dipped low and was tinged with a roiling darkness. If you don't even have that much guts, then even thinking you can win against my Calamity is naive. The demon doll, Calamity, kicked the ground and launched itself into the air, closing the gap in an instant. Pedro reacted just a moment too slow. So intent was he on not wanting the princess to notice, it was the tiniest of openings, but with one that would prove fatal. First, the sword was knocked from clockwork hands. Then the claws continued to dig in, cutting through the blue armor like butter. Oh my, what's wrong? The tail whipped in, encircling the Blue Knight. With a twitch of the puppeteer's fingers, the tail tightened, crushing both the knight's arms. Hee, caught you. The claws grabbed the Blue Knight by its feathered helm and lifted it up off its feet. To stop! The first puppet he'd made, that he put so much effort into, was being torn to pieces. Pedro lost himself for a moment and ran forward. You are so impatient. No need to worry. I was going to give him back. The Crimson Demon held the Blue Knight high and threw it down towards Pedro. Gah. The Blue Knight crashed into Pedro and bowled him over. He laid in a crumpled heap upon the lawn under the body of the puppet. Please stop. The princess stepped between the fallen pair and the masked puppeteer, her arms spread wide. I offer myself to you in return. I command you to cease this senseless violence. I offer myself to you. In return, I command you cease this senseless violence. At Princess Tia's bold words, the puppeteer licked his lips loudly. You'd offer yourself in place of your guard? Why, you bring tears to my eyes, princess. You mustn't, Lady Tia. Barely conscious, Pedro desperately tried to put words together. He had not the energy to use ventriloquism. My master, Pedro, is fine. Leave it to him. Hurry, run. Sir Pedro, silence. The princess's angry words, Pedro managed to open his eyes fully, for those words were addressed most surely to he, still garbed and acting the servant. You knew? I'm sorry, I pretended not to notice. The princess smiled in a sad, lonely way, then turned to the puppeteer again with a dignified expression. Now take me to my uncle. My oh my, what a princess you are! I bet you would have made quite the queen too. The demon slowly stretched out his right arm. When the princess stepped on, it began to beat its crimson wings. Sir Pedro, thank you so much. This last week was very fun. These words of goodbye sunk into his brain. As he watched the scarlet shadow be swallowed into the blue sky, Pedro's consciousness slowly faded into darkness. The next morning, when Pedro opened his eyes, he found himself in his room at the doll workshop. Safe on his familiar, firm bed, he felt a rush of relief. It had all been a dream. Capri called out from the workshop. Oh, how are you feeling? Pedro craned his neck. On the workbench in the back, he glimpsed disassembled blue parts spread out across the wood. He leaped up, panicked. It wasn't a dream? It seemed Capri had used the Black Priest to bring Pedro in the broken form of the Blue Knight back from the castle. It's my fault. Pedro's eyes trailed over his former masterpiece, now reduced to junk. His memory then trailed back over cool turquoise blue eyes, a warm smile like a ray of sunlight, and fine fingers pouring black tea. Pedro ground his lip between his teeth. The Blue Knight wasn't good enough. If I had any talent as a puppeteer, I wouldn't have been able to protect Princess Tia. It seems you still don't understand, Capri muttered. His face took on a rare expression of severity. What you lack is here. In a forceful motion, he jabbed his finger against Pedro's chest. Pedro could only blink in shock. Her Highness knew the truth of the Blue Knight, and yet she chose to pretend not to. Do you really not understand why? Because, unexpectedly, in the depths of his mind, he had a flash of insight. Sir Pedro, silence, she had said, and then I pretended not to notice. He recalled the sad, lonely smile she gave him when she revealed it. Something hot boiled up inside his chest. Pedro raised his head and fixed Capri with an intense gaze. Master, I beg of you, help me repair the Blue Knight. The old man studied his face. The masked puppeteer you fought is a man feared like a demon in our trade. A half-baked man can't hope to match him. Do you understand? Even so, I will, for the person who believed in me. When he said this, Capri smiled broadly, as if something grand had just fallen in his lap. It was the day before the crowning ceremony at the palace. The princess's absence had been noticed, and the royal keep fell into an uproar from top to bottom. There's a card trapped between the pages. The door has already been opened. Join the Dance of the Valorous. Oh, look what I found. Oh, I get it. I guess this is technically considered Republican territory. It absolutely is a foreign manse. And the Blue Knight is a character from the novel, I think. Jeez, he sure is a detail-orientated. Anyway, I got a feeling that this next one's the last of them. Dance of the Valorous. Well, now where could that be? On the outskirts of the capital in Duke Gaston's manor, Princess Tia sat in a lush room, carpeted in deep crimson. It's perfect for you, Princess. With a satisfied expression, Duke Gaston glared at his bound prisoner. What do you intend to do about the crowning ceremony today? Princess Tia asked in a quiet voice. The Duke shrunk a bit under her icy gaze. I'm afraid you will be absent, and so the throne and staff will be offered to me. The second in line. Do you believe the people will accept you? To change the subject, Tia, I have found someone willing to accept you as a bride. Seeing the sky-colored eyes waver for a moment, the Duke smiled and with renewed confidence. He's a second Imperial son and quite the connection. The Duke's smile widened. While you learn the joys of womanhood in a new land, you can leave the rest to me. It was a cowardly plan. Certainly, it wasn't a scenario that would be accepted for the Duke to take the throne in place of the first heir. However, it was different if the princess were to marry. If that were to pass, anyone could see the Duke Gaston's ascent to the throne was all but a done deal. My lord, it is about time. At his second-in-command comment, the Duke stood. I'm sure you are quite tired from daily attacks. Take the chance to rest and recover. The Duke gave a chuckle at his own shamelessness and left the room. At that moment, that won't be happening. There was a tremendous crash, and a glass window exploded into glittering powder. More chapters! Like a graceful leopard, a tall knight clad in blue armor leapt through the window. Followed behind him was a small boy wearing a cap. Princess Tia, I'm sorry, I know I'm a bit late, he said. Sir Pedro, so you did come, after all. A tremulous smile floated onto the princess's face. Somewhat embarrassed, the boy returned the smile. Their eyes locked and words unsaid passed between them. Hey, there's a time and place for things, the Duke, having been completely ignored, was sputtering in anger. As the Duke seized, the second-in-command was stealthily sneaking up on the still-bound princess. He reached out his hand for the princess's shoulder. The Blue Knight leapt forward like a bolt from a crossbow. Blarg! The pitiable second-in-command, having taken a direct punch from the Blue Knight, collapsed against the wall, unconscious. That's a bit much. Duke Gaston, now white as a sheet, fled the room in a stumbling lurch. Princess Tia, let us hurry. Your crowning ceremony begins soon, Pedro said. Yes. Escaping the manse, the two were pursued by the Duke and his guards. However, as if to obstruct their path, a scarlet shadow fell down, striking the ground. Sorry, but I'm gonna have to get in your way, I'm afraid. Thoroughness is the #1 part of being a puppeteer, after all. The way he spoke made it hard to believe it was just a job. It was the masked puppeteer Harlequin and the crimson demon doll Calamity. White blade met deadly claw, blue and red twisted about in blinding fashion. The cover to the fight had been cleaved off. "Oh, you're moving better," Harlequin exclaimed. Surprisingly, the Blue Knight's movements were just a little bit faster than that of the Crimson Devil puppet Calamity. "I broke it all to pieces too, but to fix it back up in just one day, looks like the old man found himself a good apprentice. You know my master?" Harlequin twirled his fingers, and Calamity fluttered its wings and slowly lifted into the sky. "We have a bit of history, yes," he giggled. "But forget about that. What'll you do about this?" And as he howled those words, the red puppet swooped down. Pedro pulled his strings back, and the Blue Knight nearly avoided the grasping claws. "Or this!" Smooth as flowing water, Calamity sent out its log-like tail to swipe at the knight. Pedro's threads flowed down and to the right. Dropping its center of gravity, the Blue Knight shifted its sword to a slant and redirected the force of the tail upwards. "Or this!" Calamity swung its horned head around and charged straight for the Blue Knight's torso. Pedro snapped his threads upwards and to his left this time. The Blue Knight, who had let itself fall slightly back, now slashed its sword down in a blur of light. With a small, pleasant cracking sound, the crimson wing on the right side of the puppet was hewn straight off. Slightly panicked, the masked puppeteer wrenched back on the strings and put space between himself and the Blue Knight. "Hey, how about we call it a draw here?" Knowing it was hopeless, Pedro still offered. As he expected, a happy voice called back. "Now don't make bad jokes like that. It's been too long since I've had this much fun, after all." Seemingly drunk on warped joy, Harlequin twisted his hands around in a complex motion. It looked almost as if he were drawing magic circles in the air. "I didn't think I'd end up using this," he giggled. Calamity crossed both arms across its body as if holding itself. Slowly, a burning scent filled the air. A cold chill ran down Pedro's spine. He sent to moving the Blue Knight, but realized the princess was behind it. "You can regret it in your next life," Harlequin screamed. The Crimson Demon took an imposing stance. Its massive jaw creaked. There was a rushing of air, and a ball of brilliant flames spewed forth. The area was engulfed in a violent pillar of swirling fire. The Blue Knight, Pedro, and the princess were all swallowed by the inferno. "Shh, so that's it, is it? Guess it was kind of a pity to end it there, huh?" Gazing at the roaring flames, Harlequin muttered regretfully. However, his eyes soon narrowed, puzzled. No scent of meat rusting or metal melting reached his nose. "What?" The crimson maelstrom began to swirl faster, and the center suddenly parted as if blown apart from the inside. From the middle rose a blue twister. From within the flame, the Blue Knight arose. Across its shoulders, Pedro and Princess Tia could be seen clinging, hale and hearty. But had blown away the raging flames was its tremendous two-handed sword. Spinning the enormous blade like a whirlwind, a butterfly made of flame danced above the Blue Knight's head. It was a fantastical scene. "You think that'll work?" Harlequin began gesturing again. It seemed he intended to launch another fireball. "I won't let you," Pedro cried. Splitting through the wall of flames, the Blue Knight forced its way forward, and the next moment Calamity's horned head was cleaved perfectly in two. Ahaha, absolutely wonderful. The fireball, moments from relief, puffed up within the crimson puppet and caused a small explosion. Flung by the shockwaves, Blue Knight was tossed into the air. Pedro braced both legs and managed to catch it. "Sir Pedro, are you alright?" "I'm fine, yeah, but I don't think there's any saving him." Though Harlequin may have been a foe, his was still a life that had been taken. Pedro felt the guilt of such a deed strike him. Princess, seeing Pedro so troubled, enveloped him in her arms. "I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't kill me off so easily," said a whispering voice from inside the pillar of flames. The voice seemed somehow satisfied. "I applaud your efforts, young man. I'll back down nicely this time. Looking forward to when we next meet. Ahaha." The ground shook, and a red and black shadow launched skyward and disappeared from sight. Pedro and the princess looked at one another and burst into relieved laughter. The boy, the girl, and one puppet left for the capital on light feet, while the masked puppeteer fled into the deep forest, riding his scorched creation. Stopping suddenly, the masked puppeteer spoke to the shadows in the trees. You're there, aren't you, old man? Noticed me, did you? Pedro's master, Capri, stepped out from the cover of the trees. As always, the Black Priest was with him. But it was a curious sight, for the puppet had no arms. As I saw it, you fixed the blue puppet's arms with parts from the Black Priest. No wonder it moved so well. Well, the gap between you and Pedro was a bit too much, after all. I took it upon myself to give him a helping hand. Harlequin's shoulders sunk in response to the words of the old puppet master. Well, I don't mind, since I had fun. But if and when the 13 factories find out about this, I don't think Pedro will have too easy either, do you? Will have it too easy either, do you? The 13 factories. The moment he heard those disturbing words, Capri's expression darkened. Ahaha. Well then, see you soon. Leaving behind a surprised laugh, the masked puppeteer disappeared into the deep forest. It is a road all puppeteers must pass, the old puppet master muttered in a quiet voice, almost as if he was telling it to himself. Afternoon in the palace began with a tea party in the gardens. The princess, as always, filled 3 cups of black tea from the pot. Please enjoy your tea. Thank you very much, Pedro said. Behind the boy sipping tea stood a knight armored in blue. However, he had not a word to say. What happened to the Duke in the end? On the night of the crowning ceremony, Duke Gaston had disappeared with his vassals. After all, his plan had been foiled by the Queen, successfully crowned before countless countrymen. The royal guard, whose allegiances had been questionable before the coronation, fell to their knees in contrition and swore their loyalty to the new Queen. The Duke, before he could be held for the crime of abducting the princess, understandably chose to flee the country. My uncle has chosen to entrust himself to the Empire. Apparently, he sought protection from the Imperial Prince that he had arranged as a husband for me. The Queen smiled slightly. However, it seems as if they consider him something of a pest. I feel a bit sorry for him. Pedro was amazed. They do not deserve your sympathy. In truth, Pedro did not think Duke Gaston would back down easily. And what of the machinations of that foul-masked puppeteer Harlequin? Capri, Pedro's teacher, seemed to know the jester, but simply dodged any questions about him with frustrating vagueness. Regardless, Pedro knew another battle would come, and soon. He would have to upgrade the Blue Knight if he hoped to emerge victorious. Oh, Pedro. Oh, god dang it. Oh, Pedro. A slightly irritated, yet comforting voice snapped Pedro from his reverie. You wish for your tea to grow cold? The clear blue eyes which met his own carried their own message. It will be all right. Pedro, a little embarrassed, took his tea and drank deeply. It was enough to simply have this moment with her. The end. Another book that in-game is a series of fictional novels for children, and all the characters in it are real people in this world. And that's a whole lot of, what do they call it? Foreshadowing. Bunch of foreshadowing. Yes, foreshadowing for days. Don't eat my books. Santa. Aww. Oh, thing come to Liberal again? Hey, Yakubo, it seems I'll be here for quite a while again. You seem pretty busy yourself. Of course we are. After all, we've got a pact signing approaching. Haha, sorry, but I won't have time to bother you for a while. Don't eat those, I enjoy the reading. Aw, thank you, you dirty girl. This should be the ambassador's office. Shall we say hello to Elsa? Talk to her. Alright, let me introduce you. Yes, come in. Pardon us, Elsa. Why, Zin Vasek. Hello, come in. Last I heard, you'd returned to Calvard. What's an old dog like you doing back here in Gransil? Well, let's just say this old dog had a trick or two more to show off. I'll likely be here in Liberal for a while. As to be expected of an A-ranked bracer, I suppose. You never let up, do you? So who's this with you? A pleasure to meet you, ma'am. I'm Estelle Bright of the Bracer Guild. These are our, assistants, Olivier Loenheim and Chloe Rins. A pleasure, Ambassador. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ambassador. The pleasure is mine. I'm Elsa Cochrane, Calvard's ambassador to Liberal. I get the feeling this is a bit more than a social call, though. I'm afraid so. Estelle and our party asked about the threatening letter the embassy received. Ah, that letter, yes. You're helping the Royal Army investigate the matter, then? Technically, yes. Threats of terrorism aren't exactly something the Guild can ignore either, though. Would you mind helping us out? Well, I suppose. We're all stuck in the situation after all. What would you like to know? Well, to start with, do you have any idea who would have sent that letter? Like, does anyone in the Republic oppose the signing of the pact, or... Well, of course. You're looking at one, after all. Huh? Elsa, please. Try not to tease the kids too much, yeah? Well, the truth's the truth, then. I'm pretty sure I've chewed your ear off about Erebonia enough for you to know what I think, Well, yes. Haha, still, Miss Bright, don't misunderstand me. President Rocksmith and Parliament have already approved the pact. My personal feelings won't get in the way of my job. Right. Is there anything else from Calvard who might oppose the pact? Oh, certainly. They're all tiny groups, so... To be honest, there's no real reason to oppose it anyway. No reason? I don't quite follow. It's not worth bothering. The pact doesn't have any practical effect. It's simply agreeing to the statement, we shall not rely on violence to solve international problems and negotiate instead. It's more of a declaration than anything else, but... It's a little more than a promise which can be broken without consequence, save a loss of face, no? Precisely. The worst it could do would be to rally other countries against the aggressor. Now, it's true that relations between Erebonia and Calvard have gotten even worse than usual over the past decade. So there is some value in establishing Liberal as a place where we can negotiate. But again, who'd bother opposing that? Yeah, it doesn't really seem like the thing you'd send a bunch of threatening letters about. Well, Ambassador Cochrane, if you don't believe someone from Calvard is the perpetrator, then whom do you suspect? Well, my gut of course tells me to blame it all on the Erebonians, their militaristic hawk faction specifically. But frankly, even they have that new engine on the line. They aren't so stupid as to cut off their noses to spite their faces. The new engine? Wait, you mean the one from the Arsail? Yes, an engineering sample will be provided to both Calvard and Erebonia. It'll happen right after the signing, in fact. Whoa! As to be expected of Queen Alicia, she holds both Empire and Republic in the palm of her hand. Yes, I have to admit, she's handled this masterfully. That cutting-edge engine is going to birth a whole new generation of airship designs, and Alicia is practically handing it out, so long as you sign this agreement, and play nice with it and each other, at least for a while. Even the most testosterone-poisoned ninnies among the Erebonian hawks wouldn't want to miss this chance. Yeah, I guess so. Which means, of course, that the possibility that either the Republic or the Empire interfering directly is pretty low. Indeed. I'm sorry I can't be of more help. No, you are a big help. Just being able to cross suspects off the list helps a lot. Oh, speaking of which, though, we'd like to ask you about something else. Estella asked Ambassador Cochrane about Renee's parents. Harold Hayworth, a merchant from Crossbow. I can't say it rings any bells, I'm sorry. He's never visited the embassy, at least. Darn. Well, thanks. Do remember that Crossbill sits directly between Erebonia and Calvard, however. You may want to inquire at the Erebonian embassy as well. Okay, thanks, Ambassador. And thanks for being so open with us. You're quite welcome. I'm glad I could help. By the way, you said your name was Estelle Bright? You didn't happen to be Brigadier General Bright's daughter. Oh, you know my dad? Of course. The heroic vanquisher of the Imperial Army, and now the head of Liberal's Royal Army. I'd heard he had a daughter, but I didn't expect to meet you like this. Well, I'm just kind of an inexperienced newbie myself still. You're off to a good start then, I think. We at the embassy have relied on the guild a number of times in the past. Should the time come again, I hope you'll aid us, Miss Bright. Hahaha. Well, if the chance comes up, sure. Well, we'll see you around. Okay. Done in there. Huh? It's unlocked. The entrance here should be kept locked as long as there's no show like the martial arts tournament. In which case... Yeah, it seems this is our goal then. Alright, let's get inside. The Grand Arena, kinda nostalgic. Feels like we were here just yesterday. Just standing here has me recalling the admiring roar of the audience. You were invited to the castle after you won the martial arts competition, right, Estelle? I wish I could have joined you on the field. Thinking about it, it was still pretty amateurish. But you know, once the whole thing is cleared up, I'd like to take part in next year's martial arts competition. To test my own ability, for one. I'd like to join in on the action too. I don't really feel like I'd have a chance against you, Zen. Wait, then I shall sing from the seats to cheer you on, Estelle. I will serenade my love for you as mightily as I can. Pass. Well, monsters? This feels reminiscent of some old Colosseum games. The setting is certainly apt. It's a pity we lack an audience. Here they come. Alright, that was not anticipated. Monsters, get out your monster fucker license. I always have it on me. You need a license for that? Uh-oh. Thanks for watching. You can also catch my streams on twitch.tv/transleona to join in on the fun. Can't wait to see you there.